I'm going to hold your hand while I say this, but if you ask these kind of questions in badminton, I can guarantee you're not going to improve. So now that I have your attention, and some of you are probably already chatting in the comments, make sure to like, follow, subscribe, engage with the video, share this with someone who you think this is relevant to. But I'm a rant now. So I get this question all the time. I think most prominent badminton creators do. And they are what I would consider bad and inconsiderate questions. And I'll explain what I mean by that in a bit. I'll give you an example. So the one I screenshotted for this video reads as so. Pwede po ba humingi ng tips para lumalakas po? So what this translates to for my non-Filipino viewers is, can I get some advice? Can I get some tips on how to be stronger? The context being badminton, how to be stronger in badminton. It's the reason why I say this is a bad and inconsiderate question is because there is no specific problem that is being solved. For example, you ask 10 people this answer or this question, you're going to get 10 different answers because it is an open-ended question. There is no metric to determine if the question has been answered correctly or not. So that's why it's bad. 2, it's an inconsiderate question because you are not only asking the person for advice, you're making them ask additional questions. Because if you ask this question, that person that you asked, let's say I asked my coach, how do I get stronger at badminton, coach? They have to ask additional questions to figure out and tailor an answer for you, right? Are you a singles or doubles player? How long have you played, right? What problems do you struggle with right now? Where are you losing points, right? We have to go on a mini interview to then give you a subpar answer. So it's bad and it's inconsiderate. And the reason why I say if you ask these kind of questions, you're not going to succeed, it's because it shows a lack of thinking, it shows a lack of self-awareness and realization in your play, right? And any successful player in any sport, honestly, is going to have a level of self-awareness that they're able to realize this is where I'm winning points, this is where I'm losing points, this is my weakness, my strength. And now obviously there are different degrees of thinking and mental. Some players are very low, some players are high IQ, but all successful players or all players that improve eventually develop this mentality and this kind of internal dialogue, and they will continue to have it. I guarantee it. So when you ask these kind of questions, I already know that we're not there yet. And that kind of leads me to my next point. I want to rant and I want to make an assumption. Why do people ask these kind of questions? And I actually have notes because this is my 7th take of this rant because I like my rants to have some structure. My personal assumption derives from my personal experience answering these questions. Because when I first blew up on TikTok 2 years ago, I used to get these questions and I would actually sit down and answer them, right? Because of course, you're a new creator, all engagement is welcome, everything is new, sunshines and rainbows. So the first few times I got this comment, I would actually sit down and be like, hey, tell me about yourself. Do you have footage of your play? Tell me more so I can give you a better answer. Every time I did this and every time I gave them actually good advice, hey, your lifts are short, you need to lift better. Or hey, your smash is all arm, no hip rotation, blah. 1, none of them ever got back to me. And 2, if I perchance saw a video on my FYP of them or something like that, they did not improve. Nothing changed. No change was affected, basically, right? And so why does that happen? My assumption is that my audience, again, I'm speaking for the Filipino viewership, very budget conscious, obviously, as being a rather poor country, being a third world country, right? So the mentality has always been never pay full price for something. If you can do it for cheaper, and if you can do it for free, even better. So I think they have this mentality and they took it to badminton. Why pay a coach when I can just ask someone for some ancient Chinese secret or some magical technique and I can improve for free? The thing is, that doesn't happen. And second of all, you are not entitled to improvement. Badminton is a recreational sport. This isn't like education where most countries would agree everyone is entitled to an education, it's beneficial, it helps you become a productive member of society. Getting better at badminton does not make you a productive member of society, right? Only the 1% of 1% can make a living from just playing badminton, right? So I think for some reason there are a lot of people that have this entitlement that they should be able to improve at badminton, and even worse, for free, which is just not the case. Because one, it's not required. Again, I'm looping around, sorry, because I'm trying to make a checklist in my head, but you don't have to get better at the sport. It's a recreational sport, right? Two, to improve, someone has to spend their time and give you their experience so that you don't make the same mistakes, right? And that value exchange has to be paid for. Otherwise, you're not going to get any training. So those two things for my assumption. I'm getting lost. I'm going to pause right here. My second assumption is, I put in my notes here, you think you want to get better. So I think that the players that make these kind of questions, I think they want to get better. I think they idolize a player, or they idolize the grind and winning. But when it comes down to the execution, the daily grind, I don't think that it happens. Because again, if you have that daily grind, you're constantly exposed to the sport. You are eventually going to, whether you want to or not, have that internal dialogue or develop that internal dialogue that I mentioned earlier, right? So I would extend this and go on a limb and say that the same players asking these questions are also the same players that only play one social game per week, right? They don't have any court time. They just want to get better, just for the sake of being better, if that makes sense. So we've established why these questions are bad. We've established why I think these players ask these kind of questions. I think the last thing I want to do to wrap up this video and not make it just full of rant is, how do you ask better questions? So we just do the opposite of what I was already talking about earlier. You ask a good question, you ask a considerate question. So one, a good question should, when answered, solve a very specific problem, right? It should be very easy to realize that's a good answer. For example, what's 2 plus 2? So we know it's an addition problem. We know that the correct answer is the sum. So obviously it's math and that's easy, but we can translate that into badminton. So for example, I honestly don't know if I said this earlier or not because I've taken so many takes, but I'm getting delirious at this point. But basically, right, I struggle with length on my forehand lifts, or I struggle with defense on my shoulder area when it's flat, or when it's a hip area related placement smash. Sorry, bad words, but you guys get what I'm trying to say. When those questions are answered, right, the answer should be able to address one specific thing, right? There's not a million answers that will fit into this one question. There are just a few, and they will all solve one purpose. So that's why I consider it good. And two, it's considerate because it doesn't require additional questions or additional effort, energy, thinking from the person answering. They can just say, hey, so I see that you're using the wrong grip on the forehand, so that's why your lifts are short, or your tension's too high, whatever. Or hey, when you're defending, your right leg needs to go back, assuming you're a right-hand player, right? These are just quick things, and then they can be executed easily, right? So the players that answer these questions, they're looking for assistance in execution. They are not offloading all of their internal dialogue and all of their thinking onto someone else, if that makes sense. But yeah, I think my rant is done, honestly. I can now send this to people when I get these questions, because even though you make a video, not everyone watches it or not everyone sees it through, especially one this long form. But if you made it all the way to the end, thank you. Love the support, love the engagement. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. See ya.